Welcome to the Pink Gavel, the podcast where everyday opinions, internet debates, random obsessions, and questionable takes get their day in court. I'm your host, Allie, and in episode 2, we're putting iced coffee on trial. We'll go through the charges, review the evidence, consider the defense, and by the end, the court will deliver its final verdict. Let's enter the courtroom. Today's case is: has buying iced coffee become too normalized? Iced coffee, please approach the bench. Buying iced coffee stands accused of being too normalized, draining our wallets, turning a personal routine into a corporate transaction, disguising dessert level sugar as a casual drink, and being way less customizable and convenient than coffee made at home. Before we proceed, I need the record to show that I am not anti coffee. I am a coffee drinker. I have had coffee every morning for almost 15 years. I buy iced coffee out once in a while. I can enjoy it, and I understand the appeal. But I also make coffee at home, and I've made it a lot of different ways: coffee pot, Keurig, French press, cold brew, all of it. So I'm not coming into this courtroom as someone who hates coffee. I'm coming in as someone who loves coffee enough to know that we have allowed buying iced coffee to get way out of control. Let's get into the evidence. Exhibit A: the cost and draining our wallets. Let's start with the biggest one: the cost. Buying iced coffee out every day gets expensive fast. And that's just the reality. It starts not to be just a treat anymore. Buying the iced coffee becomes a habit. That is money leaving your account constantly. Actually, this whole stop buying coffee argument has been around for years. It was popular with finance gurus like Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman, who were telling everyone that small purchases, they add up, and people hated it. But really, they were onto something. Susie Orman's famous argument was basically, if you're spending about $100 a month on buying coffee, and you instead invested that over decades, that money could become serious money. And people dragged her for that. But the court has to admit, she absolutely has a point. I think the part that people hate about the argument is that it holds up a mirror. It forces people to look at the fact that convenience and instant satisfaction can become a habit to justify, even when it's draining your money. Susie is logically correct. Investing $100 or $200 every month into an investment account, like a brokerage account or an IRA, will accrue growth and could potentially become really good money down the line. It is understood by this court that times are hard. There are people living paycheck to paycheck. Inflation is high and things are expensive. Investing your iced coffee money can sound unrealistic. But the court also recognizes that the logical reality is that every time you pay for an iced coffee, you're losing revenue, and a good chunk of it. People are out here buying 7, 8, sometimes $10 iced coffees and daily. Is it really worth it? The court would argue that buying coffee out every day is just not a good financial decision, especially in a time where times are tough. Let's go into Exhibit B. We have handed the routine over to corporations. There's something weird about taking this little daily routine, your morning coffee, your comfort drink, and handing it over to a corporation every single day. You don't know who made it. You don't know how clean the station was. You don't know if they rushed it. And I'm not saying coffee shops are always dirty, but you just never know what you're going to get, really. And that makes it impersonal. It feels more like a transaction, and less like something you have control and independence with. And the court finds that a little depressing. Exhibit C, turning coffee into dessert. This is where iced coffee starts to lose the plot. Because at some point, people stopped ordering just coffee and started ordering dessert with a splash of caffeine. There are syrups, sauces, cold foams, whipped cream, drizzle, flavor swirls, flavor shots, toppings, and then the pumps. The pumps and the pumps and the pumps of syrup. Now, listen, I can get into a fun coffee. I am not above a cute drink, but some of these orders are basically an 800-calorie milkshake acting like a coffee. And that is not a morning coffee. That is a dessert beverage. And if that's your treat once in a while, that's all right. But iced coffee runs have become culture. People are drinking drinks like this multiple times a week, sometimes every day. And honestly, what does it say about our culture that dessert for breakfast has become normal? Because if someone said to you, I drink a milkshake every morning, you might judge that. But put it in a plastic cup with ice, espresso, cold foam, and a cute little sticker on the side, and suddenly it's self care. The court is suspicious. Moving on to Exhibit D, being less customizable and convenient than homemade coffee. When you make your coffee at home, you actually have more possibilities, not less. You can make it with a regular coffee pot or an espresso machine, and over time, you can invest in little things that make it better and customizable to how you like. Syrups, creamers, better cups, better ice, even coffee ice cubes, maybe different beans or different flavors. And that's what people miss. Making coffee at home doesn't have to be boring coffee. It can become your own little setup, exactly how you like it. I know personally, I have a coffee bar with a few syrups and things I like to use, and it makes me want to make iced coffee more. And the defense is probably going to argue it's faster to have someone else make it for you. However, you can counteract this by doing things like brewing coffee the night before, putting it in the fridge, and now it's cold and ready in the morning. Add ice, creamer, syrup, whatever you like, and you're done. No having to DoorDash it, no having to stop at a coffee shop. So, the idea that homemade iced coffee has to be this whole production, the court isn't buying it. Now it's time to hear from the defense. And to be fair, the defense does have some points. Buying iced coffee out can be convenient. Sometimes you're already out. Sometimes you don't have the energy to make it yourself. Sometimes the coffee shop version just hits different. The defense would argue that coffee shops are social. Maybe you meet a friend there. Maybe you work from there. And sometimes it's not even about the coffee. It's about the outing, the drive, the cup, the routine, the tiny reward that starts your day off right or makes it feel a little better. But this is where the court has to step in. The evidence still outweighs it. Because, yes, iced coffee can be convenient, it can be a treat, and sometimes it does hit different. But the cost, the daily habit, the amount of sugar, the time, the gas used, the way it's been turned into a lifestyle, all of that adds up. The defense has a point that when iced coffee is occasional, intentional, or actually adding something to your life, then it can be worth it. But when it becomes automatic, when you're buying it every day and it becomes impersonal, you aren't valuing your money, or acting like making good coffee at home is impossible, that's where the defense starts losing me. So, after reviewing the charges, the evidence, and the defense, it's time to deliver the final verdict. This court has reached a decision. And on the charge of, has buying iced coffee become too normalized? This court is going to go with guilty. In the court's opinion, the court is not anti coffee. The court is anti normalizing a daily $7 beverage like it's a basic human right. And with that, the verdict is in. Now that we have our verdict, let's move into after court. Since today's case is on iced coffee, I figured it would only make sense to share what I would actually make at home, not order out, because that would be very suspicious after this verdict. My go to at home iced coffee would be cold coffee right out of the fridge, lots of ice, some Coffee Mate French vanilla creamer, and a couple of pumps of salted caramel syrup or blueberry syrup. And every once in a while, I may do banana bread syrup, depending on what I'm feeling like. And maybe a small amount of whipped cream. The possibilities are endless, honestly. And in my personal opinion, I have to give it to Susie Orman. She's right. If you open a brokerage account and invest in something like the S&P 500, you're most likely to see growth. And if you add money into that brokerage account every month, it's going to grow. And I've actually done this myself, and she is right about that. So that's my ruling, that's my recipe, and that's the end of today's After Court. That concludes episode 2 of the Pink Gavel. Court is adjourned.